Okay, so we have a person and we use some set of attributes to describe a person, their name, their height, and their weight. And person can have behaviors like eating and sleeping. So if we talk about eating, so if someone overeats, their weight can get higher, their weight can increase. If a person starves, then eventually their weight will decrease. Or if they go on a diet, then they will most likely change their weight. So either increase or decrease, it depends, but depend on our eating habit, our weight changes. So our behaviors will have an effect on the attributes that we are using to describe the person. Okay. Again, if it is a table can be described using different attributes, like its height, weight, and the material. So characteristics of objects can be identified as properties, the things we use to describe a certain object, like name of a person or a brand of a laptop, things like that. And they have behaviors. A laptop can be used to watch movies or play video games. A person can eat, sleep, and they can walk. So those are the behaviors which can affect properties. And again, there's another thing which is called identity. You can think of identity as a special type of properties. They are properties, but they are special. So properties are something like we can use to uniquely identify someone. So if it is a laptop, there are serial numbers and things that we can use to uniquely identify it. If it is a person, we can think of a national identity card numbers. They're unique for everyone in the country. So that's a property. NIC is like a property, like weight, height, name, and NIC, they're similar. But when we talk about NIC, it has a different characteristic than other properties. It is name, weight, height, and NIC. Name, weight, and height, they are not unique. There might be two people in a group who might have the same weight or same height. So it's not unique. But national identity card number is a unique property. So we call them identity properties or identity characteristics. And identity characteristics, they can depend on the context. So we think a good example would be the university. So all of you have NICs or national identity card numbers. But university does not give you NIC to uniquely identify each and every one of you. You have a student registration number. Because using a dedicated index number or registration number, it makes more sense rather than using the NIC. Because we can, if we think about your registration number, it has S for science, and then again followed by your batch number, and then a 3-digit number. So using this specific format has advantages. Like when someone look at your registration number, they know from which faculty you are and which batch you belongs to. Okay, things like that can be inferred from your registration number. So it makes more sense to use a dedicated format based on the context. We obviously can use NIC to identify and distinguish between each and every one, but it makes more sense to come up with a different scheme to use as index number so that it is more convenient in the university context. Okay. So this is an example for properties of a person: name, age, weight, and height. Behaviors: eat, talk, walk, and sleep. And this is another example. We have a mobile phone which has properties: IMEI sequence, color, camera, and battery capacity. So all of these are properties, but IMEI is unique and we can use it to identify a given mobile phone. It's unique for each and every phone. So we can use it to uniquely identify a mobile phone. But color, camera, and battery capacity, they are not unique for a mobile phone. There might be two mobile phones with the same color, identical colors, identical cameras, and identical battery capacities, but their IMEI will obviously be different. So we can use this to identify a mobile phone uniquely because it's unique for a mobile phone. And then we have behaviors of a mobile phone. We use it to call, message, and take photos. So taking photos, use the camera property. And when we are calling or messaging or taking photos, it will drain our battery. So battery capacity will change. So behaviors will have an influence on these properties. So in Java, we have something called a class. It is a user-defined template which is used to describe a real world, or it might be real world, it might not be real world. It depends on the context again, okay? It is used to define the properties and behavior of a particular object. Because if you think of an example, yes, so can you see the paint window? I hope you can see the paint window. Can someone confirm? Okay. So say we are going to create a class to describe an employee, okay? An employee of an organization. There is an organization in which there are a lot of employees who are working. So now we are going to create a class to describe an employee, which is a template which we can use to describe an employee, basically, okay? So an employee can have maybe a name, okay? An employee name. And they might have a position in that department, in the company, like their designation. And they might have a salary. And okay, we'll just leave it like this, okay? An employee can have a name, a position in the company, and a salary. But these things are not unique because there might be two employees with the same name, with the same position, even the same salary. So we will introduce a new property called EMP number. So this is an EMP number, okay? So this is a template or a blueprint which we can use to describe an employee. Just the template, okay? Now what we are going to do is say our company is a relatively new one and we have maybe 2 employees. And we have recruited 2 employees, okay? Now we need to save their data. So this is the template that we are going to use. We use this template, EMP number, name, position, salary to save employee data. So employee 1, their employee number, let's say 001, okay? And their name, say the name is Taylor. And their position, let's say their position is, she's a manager. And their salary is 100,000. Okay. So now we have used the template to describe an employee. So this is our first employee, the information. What we have used to describe this employee is the template that we have created before. We will say it's our employee 1. And then again we recruit another employee. So we are going to recruit another employee. Recruit another one. And let's say their employee number is 002. Their name is their name is, their position is an account, and their salary is, let's say their salary is 80,000. This is another employee of the same company, and we use the same template to describe another employee. We call this template a class. This is the class. Basically, it's the template. And these are the objects, E1 and E2. Okay? So our class template is our class, and the entities which have actual data are called objects. This is E1 is one object, and E2 is another object. Or you can say it's an instance. It's an instance of our class or template. We have the template, and we created copies of our template with actual data. They are called objects or instances. And in Java, what we use to create instances is a keyword called new. Okay? We use the new keyword. We will see how to implement these things. Okay? We use something called the new keyword in order to create objects. Hear me clearly. Can you know? Can you clearly hear me? Okay. I'll tell it again. Okay. So in Java, we have something called a class. Okay, a class is a template which we can use to describe a real world entity. Okay. So here, this is our class. This one is our class. And these are the attributes that we use to describe the entity that we are going to represent using this class. So we have an organization in which it's a new organization. We are going to recruit employees. So we need to save employee information. For that purpose, we first need a template, something like a form. Okay. In a real world, you can think of this as a form in which we have these attributes that we are going to use to describe an employee. They have an employee number, a name, position, and a salary. Okay. And when we recruit a new employee, we create an instance of this class, which is called an object. So this is our class. We create an instance of that, which is an object. Okay. And in that object, we save the values for those attributes. Employee number is 001, name is Taylor, position is manager, and salary is 100,000. And then we recruit another employee. And we again create an instance of this class to save employee information. And their employee number is 002, their name is Harry, and their position is an accountant, and their salary is 80,000. So we create instances of this template to create data or information of our employees. Okay. Okay, let me show you another example. Say we are going to, okay, I'll write it here, okay? So we are going to create a database to save movie information. Think about, yes, it's something similar to structures in C. So it's not literally a structure, but when you're thinking about a class, you can think of it as a structure in C, that you're going to use structures in C, which this is something similar to it, but not identical, okay? To make things easier for you to think, you can think of it as a structure in C, but in literal sense, it's not a structure, okay? Okay, now we are going to think about a different scenario. We are going to create a database to save movie information. Now, first you can think of what are the attributes that you're going to save about a movie. Okay, you can think of a movie name. You obviously need to save a movie name. And maybe the director of that movie. And the year in which it has been released. And again, you can think of something like a rating of that movie, IMDb rating or something like that. So these are the things that you're going to use when you need to describe a movie. So this is the template which we can use to save movie information. So in Java, this is the class that we can use to save information about movies. And now what you are going to do is you are going to actually save information about the movie. Okay, what you do is you create an object using the new keyword. New keyword. And then you're going to save it. Name, a movie name, maybe Lord of the Rings. And director, I don't know the director. Okay, so I'll put the writer name. And year, we'll say it's this, and rating is something like this. So this is an object. So what we have here is our template, but filled with data. So this is the object, an instance of our template or class. So if you want to save information about a different movie, then you can again create a new instance using the new keyword and fill in information. And it's a different object. Okay. So we will proceed with the first example, employee scenario, and we will try to implement this scenario in Java. Okay. So I'll give you, so if you have already installed Java and IntelliJ, I'll give you some time to launch the program IntelliJ so that you can try with me. Otherwise, if you still couldn't install IntelliJ and Java, get it installed, and till then you can write everything down in a paper maybe so that you can use it for later, and we'll upload the recording too. Okay. So I'll give you some time to launch your IntelliJ if you need to launch it. Okay. So once you launch your IntelliJ IDE, what you need to do is go to this icon and go to File and then New and a new project. Okay, so once you see this window, you can give a project name. Okay, let's say it's our company project. Okay, we are going to come up with a system for a company. So we'll say our project name is, and in the next space, you need to, so you can give the location in which you're going to save your project. So I'm going to save it in work CSC1051 session 2 folder, and my project name is company. And here you should be able to see your Java version. If it is not there, you can select a drop down and select it. I mean, probably you should see your Java version here. Okay. So once you set up everything, you can select this create button. So then it will take some time to launch your new project. So it will take some time. It will depend on the performance of your computer. So it will take some time to create a new project. So in the left side of your IDE, you have your project explorer. Okay. So all your source files should reside in this SRC folder, which stands for source. So all the class files you are going to create should reside in here. And Yeah, I just gave you some time to launch the project, okay? So that anyone who is doing with me can like launch it and get ready. Okay, I hope you have created a project now. Okay, once you create the project, what you have here in your left side is a project explorer. So all of your project files should be there. And when we talk about a Java program, it consists of different types of classes. It has different classes, and each class can have set of attributes and behaviors, and they communicate with each other using these methods or classes. So you called functions in C. So you had functions in C. Now in Java, we have the same concept, but what we call them in Java is methods. Okay, we call them methods, but it's essentially the same as a function. Okay, in C. So if we go back to our example, now we are going to create our template in which we are going to save employee information. We have employee number, name, position, and salary. So once you get your project, there will be a main class which has the main method, and there will be some code for you to test whether your project has been set up properly. If you can select this play button to run it and see whether your project has been successfully set up. Okay. If you have any question up to now, you can put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask, okay? It'll take some time to build everything and run. So here you have your at the bottom of your IDE, you have your command line. So you can see the result of the project, your code execution there. Now we are going to create this class, employee class. So what you need to do is first create a class file. For that, right click on the source folder and go to new and Java class. And you can give the class name employee with the extension .java. You don't necessarily have to give the extension. It will still be correct because of the IDE. But if you're creating your class using Notepad or something, you definitely have to give the .java extension. But in IDE, it is not really mandatory to give the extension because IDE will resolve it for you. And then you can press enter. Okay, now you can see we have the main class and a new class, employee. So to create a new class, what you did was right click on the source folder and you go to new and new Java class and give the class name. So this is the syntax for creating a new Java class. So IDE gives you the file which already has this part, a class declaration part. But if you are using Notepad or something, then you have to start from here because you get an empty Notepad file and then you put public, which we call an access modifier. You will learn more about access modifiers next week. Just for the time being, remember that public means, so we have a employee.java file. Inside, we are going to have an employee class. So public means this employee class can be accessed from a different class. That means if we think of an example, we have the employee class that can be accessed from a different class. For example, main class. You can access the employee class from the main class because it's public. So we put the access modifier public and then the keyword to create the class, and then the class name. In Java, we usually use capital letters for the first name of a class name. So for employee class, we use capital E followed by simple letters for the rest and 2 parentheses. So this is how you create a class in Java. But since we used the IDE, this part was already there in our file. But if you are starting from scratch, you definitely have to type this. Okay. But IntelliJ, if you use IntelliJ, IntelliJ will do it for you once we create the file under the source folder. So this is our class here. Now we have to use these attributes: employee number, name, position, and salary. So these are the 4 attributes of our employee class. So this is not enough. Unlike in Python, we have to have data types. So employee number, it's a number. So we can use data type int as the data type of employee number, and name is a set of characters. It will be a set of characters. Okay, so can you hear me now? Can someone confirm? Okay, I'll answer the questions. Okay, so you have some questions. The first one is the difference between the main class and other classes. So in each class we have attributes and methods. Okay, so if we are creating a class to describe an employee, we put the attributes that describe employee in that particular class. Main method is the entry point of any Java program. Like C, in C also you had the main method. In Java also you have a main method. Okay, so usually we put our main method in a different class and we call that class the main class. Okay, main class might have other users, but the main thing is you're putting the main method in the main class, so you call it the main class so that you don't interfere. And the other thing is, when we are creating objects, we usually do it in the main class. I mean, we can obviously create objects in different places, but it depends on our program. But mostly we use main class to create objects in simple Java programs. Okay, in complex Java programs, you can create classes, objects inside classes. But when we talk about a simple Java program, we usually use main class to create objects. You will see this when we are going through with our example. Okay. The next one is whether it's wrong if you use simple letters for class name. So usually it's not syntactically wrong. Okay. Your program will still work. But usually programmers, they stick to this convention so that it is easier for them to distinguish between things. So when they see a term which starts from a capital letter, they know this is a class, because if everyone adhere to that rule, it is easier for them to follow up their code. So when somebody sees a name or a variable with the capital letter, which starting with the capital letter, then they know this is a class. So it's a good programming practice to stick to those conventions, but it's not really necessary to start with the capital letter if we are just focusing on syntax because it's not syntactically wrong to put simple letters. Okay. Next one is, aren't we need a method inside a class? We usually have methods inside class, but there will be classes without methods. It again also depends on the context. We usually have methods inside classes, but it can depend. We can have classes without methods too. And there's another, okay, that's all for the questions, I think. We need to enter this one outside. What do you mean by this one outside the main? Just, I'll tell it. So we have a different class called the main class, in which we have the main method. Okay, so this is, I'll remove the board. So this is our main class in which we have the main method. Employee class, you can create the employee class in the same file. You can put something like this, class employee. Okay, so since we already have a class called employee, that's why it's giving error, but you can create. If it is a movie, you can create this class and put the variables here. That's not wrong, but usually we separate classes to individual files. A class will have its own file. Okay, so it's something similar to what we said earlier about class naming conventions. So usually we create classes in a dedicated file. Okay, so that's why we created an employee file, and inside that we create everything that describes an employee. Okay. I think no more questions. Okay. A name is a sequence of characters, so we can use string to save it. And possession is again a string of characters. We use string to save it. And salary is a floating point number, so we use double. Okay. So these are the attributes which describes the employee class. Now we are going to create objects. Okay, so now we say we have recruited a new employee and we need to save their information. So we go to the main class to create objects. Okay, so the syntax wise, we put the class name employee, and the employees, we call this an identifier or reference, equals new employee. So this is the new keyword. So we have our class name and a reference similar to a variable, and new keyword and employee followed by two parentheses. Okay, we will talk about this parentheses and their meaning in the next part. Okay, in the next part of today's lesson. Just for the time being, remember this. This is how you create an employee. So now we have an employee object, which is called E1. Now we need to save this information inside that object. So to access the variables, we can use the dot operator. What we can do is E1 dot will give you the list of variables. We have the employee number. 001. And their name equals, so we usually give strings inside two quotation marks. Their name was Taylor. And their position was manager. Okay. And their salary was 100,000. So we have put the values of all the variables or attributes of an employee. So what we can do is we can print a variable and see whether we have actually saved everything. Okay, so let's see now what we are going to. So in order to print something, you can use system.out.println function and pass inside these brackets whatever you need to print. Now we are going, so we have created an employee object and we have assigned Taylor as their name. Now we are going to print it. So we need to print E1 employee's name. For that, we put E1 dot name. So we can see and print it and see whether it was saved, it was assigned. Okay. When you're running your program for the first time, it might take some time. So meanwhile, if you have any question, you can type it in the chat. Until it completes building, we will move on with our discussion. Okay. So now we have seen how to create attributes. Okay. So next part is implementing behaviors. So for employee objects, we can think of different behaviors an employee would have. Okay. On the attributes itself. Okay. So as the attributes, we had employee number, name, position, and salary. So you can think of a one behavior of an employee to change the attribute inside that class as increasing salary. Okay. Sometimes you want to increase the salary of an employee by a given percentage. Let's say by a given percentage. Okay. So now what we are going to do is so we have the salary of an employee. and we are going to increase it, okay? So we need to, what we are going to do is we have a percentage and we are going multiplied by the percentage. So we write a method with the access modifier public, which means this method can be accessed from another class in a separate file. Okay. Public is the access modifier, and then we have a return type. Okay. So we will put this double. Increase salary is a method name. So this is something similar to what we did in C also. Okay. Percentage. So this is our method definition that we're going to write. So what this means is public means this method can be accessed from outside of this class, and double is the return type. And increase salary is the method name. And for this method, we are going to take the percentage as an input. Okay, the first thing is we need to calculate the increment. So our increment is a percentage of our current salary. Since we are giving the percentage as 50, 20 likewise, we need to divide the percentage by 100 to get the coefficient in which we are going to multiply it. So we divide it by 100. So this is how we are going to calculate the percentage. Okay. So increment will be an floating point value because we are multiplying salary by the percentage. And then saving that result in a local variable, in a method variable. Okay. Okay, we'll talk about the static one later. Okay. No, static. We'll talk about it later. Okay. Just we'll focus on this one for now, and we'll talk about static one later. Okay. So increment variable will have a double value. So we need to define its data type as double. So increment is a percentage of our salary. What we are going to do is we are going to add this increment to the salary. So we have the salary and we add the increment, and then we get the new salary. We assign that value to our current salary. So which means salary equals salary plus increment is our expression, which basically means our current salary equals previous salary plus the increment, or current salary plus increment. We get the result of that calculation and save it or assign it to the salary variable of this class. Okay, salary plus increment, we assign that sum to the salary again. Okay, and then this method said it's going to return a double value, so we need to return. Okay, finally what we are going to do is return the salary. It depends again on our program and our problem. We can really return something, or we can choose not to return something. Okay, so if we are not going to return anything, our return type would be void. Okay, in place of double we will have void. Okay, so if we are not going to return anything, we will put void here instead of double. But what we are going to do is we are going to calculate the amount or the increment and modify our salary by adding that increment, and we return the current salary. Okay, so this is the method which operates on the salary variable of this employee class. So what we can do here is similar to how we call the variables, we can again call this method E1 dot increase salary and pass the percentage here as 50. So this is the input variable 50. So it will call the increase salary method of the E1 class or E1 object. To be precise, it's E1 object. So we get 50 here, and 50 divided by 100 is 0.5. We multiply salary by 0.5 to calculate the increment, and then add the increment to the salary and assign that result to the salary variable. Okay, so we can do something like this. Okay, so this salary means the instance variable of this class. We have the public class employee, and we have the set of attributes that describe our class. So we call these four attributes instance variables. So to refer to instance variables, we can use this keyword here. By using this, what we mean is we are going to access the variable of the currently executing class. So this dot salary means the salary variable or attribute of the currently executing class. Okay. So when we call it on E1 dot increase salary, this will refer to the salary variable of the E1 class, E1 object. Okay. So once we run this method, we will increase the salary, and we can confirm it by first printing the E1 dot salary here, and then call the increment salary method, and then type the E1 dot salary again to confirm it. Okay. So I'll give you 2 minutes. If you are typing with me to conclude everything, I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay. As you can see, here the result we get is, first we get the 100,000, and then we call the salary increment method of the E1 class, E1 object, and we get the incremented salary as 150,000. Yeah. We don't need to add static next to public, okay? So because static is something different. We have some questions. Okay. Okay, so in Java, we have classes and methods, but in C, we don't have something called class. We just have methods. In C, we had main method or main function. In Java also, we have the main method. We call Java functions methods. So we have the main method. We put it in a class called main class. So everything in Java has to be inside a class. Okay, we didn't have this class concept in C, but in Java we have it. Okay. Employee class is an template. Okay, we use it to create employee objects, and objects have the actual data. Okay, it's something filling a form. We have a form, and we get copies of that form and fill them. But we keep the original form unchanged so that we can get more copies of it. Okay. Okay, I hope you. Is this dot salary necessary? In some context, it's really necessary. Okay, we will see an example in the next few activities. We will see an example. Okay, so this is how we are going to use methods. Okay, next we are going to talk about the static one. Just say we have so now we are going to give bonuses to our employees. Okay, for all employees we are going to use the same rate regardless of their position. Even for a manager, accountant, what we are going to do is we are going to calculate 0.2 20% of their salary and add it as a bonus. Okay, so that's the bonus rate. 20% is the bonus rate. What we are going to do is for all employees, we are going to calculate 20% of their salary and add it to their current salary as a bonus. Okay, so what we can do is we can create another attribute called bonus rate. Okay, and 20% we will save it as 0.2. So each employee class now will have a new attribute called bonus rate. Okay, but the thing is we do so every object we create of this class will have this bonus rate variable. Each object will have a copy. So if we create 10 objects, there will be 10 copies of this variable. If it is 100, we will have 100, but that's not really necessary because we are using the same rate for all employees. So what we can do is we can save this once and use it for our calculations. For that, we can make this a class variable or a static variable. So we put static inside here. That means we don't have individual copies of this bonus rate attribute in each class. Rather, we have one copy that is being shared by all the objects. Okay. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat. Okay. So I'll say it again. We can create a double bonus rate variable and save 0.2 here. Then once we create employee objects, each object will have its own copy of this variable. But the rate is the same for all employees. So we don't need multiple copies. We can use the same copy and share it among the employees. So we can put it as static. Another static variable would be the company name. Since all of these employees are working in the same company, we don't have to, so everyone has a name and a position and an employee number. So each employee object, they has to have these copies. Every employee might have a different name. So we have to have individual copies of this variable, but they are working in the same company. So we don't need to have multiple copies for a company name because it's the same company. We can create a one copy and share it among the members of that company. The company name is a string type one, and we can use company name. Let's say the company name is maybe ABC. So there's no point of creating individual copies of this variable for each object because it's the same. So we can create one and share it among the objects. We can do this by putting the static keyword in front of the attribute name. Okay, so now what we are going to do is create another method to calculate the bonus amount for each employee. Okay, so we create a public method. So public is our access modifier. Public is the access modifier, and the method is going to return the bonus rate, which will be a double value. So we put double, and the name of that method is calculate bonus amount. And it is not going to take any parameters or arguments. So we put it as empty. Okay. So what we did was we bonus amount equals to the salary into our bonus rate, which is the same for all objects. So this is it. Now here we have the salary one. Salary by salary, which means the salary of this class. So we put this here to indicate that we are talking about the salary of this object, the currently executing object. Okay. Basically, to refer to this instance variable, we use this keyword. Okay. And then since we have said that this method is going to return a double type, and we are going to return our bonus amount. Okay. Now we go back to our main class. Okay, so we will create another employee object. E2 equals again new employee. So this is how you create new object. We will talk about the meaning of these two parentheses later. And we are going to assign values to these variables of our new object. So our employee number is 2. And E2 employee's name was Harry. And he was an accountant. And his salary was 80,000. So now we have two employee objects, E1 and E2. Now we are going to calculate the bonus amount for each employee. To calculate, we can call E1 dot calculate bonus amount to calculate the bonus amount of E1. And we save it in a new variable. Okay. And likewise, we can calculate the bonus amount for E2. E2 calculate bonus method. We can call to calculate the bonus amount of E2 employee object. We call the calculate bonus amount method of the E2 object. So what happens is once you call this method, it is going to execute this method for E2 object. So we have the E2's current salary, 80,000, will be multiplied by 0.2 and it will be returned. And we'll print it and see. Okay. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, okay? So we get 20,000 as the E1's bonus amount, 16,000 as the E2's bonus amount, okay? So each of these objects calling the bonus amount, and they are using the data inside them. Okay, if you remember what we have drawn in the paint, each employee object has its own data. So these methods are you executing on those data. Okay, and okay, so this is a bonus rate static variable, and we have another variable. Wait, we have a question. Okay, I don't know how to. Okay. Yes, so we have. I think. Okay. Yeah. So this is the main class on the right side, and left side we have the employee class. Okay, so there is another static variable in our class for company name. So if you want to create another method to print it, the company name, or to update it, let's talk about updating company name. Okay, so we have a one static variable which is shared among all the classes. Okay, so we don't need to have individual methods like this. For every time we create an employee object, all these things will be like duplicated. Okay, will be copied, but we don't need to create a copy of a method that is going to update company name, because it's the same for all employees. Okay, public static void main to the employee. So we will only have one main method. Okay, so we have a one main method. That's why I didn't put public static void main to employee.java, because we have a class that describes an employee. Here we are creating objects. It's something like we have an application form. We get a copy of it using the new keyword and fill in the data. Okay, again we are getting a new copy of it and filling the new data, something like that. Okay, so main method is something special. Okay, so it's where the execution starts, from where the execution starts. Okay, yes, we can use objects instead of normal variables. So objects are also a type of data. We can treat them as same as a data type. Okay, and we can use constructors. We will see it in the next part of today's lesson. Okay. Okay, so now we are going to create a static method. Another question. So it doesn't necessarily have to be double. We can make any variable static variable. Okay. So not only for double variables, can be strings, characters. So as you can see, I think here we have a company name which is of type string, and still static. Okay, that means one variable will be shared among all the objects. Employee file imported. It's not employee file import, it means can you elaborate on this? I didn't get the question. Can you please try to, what do you mean by imported? Okay, can you reply? I'll see it later, okay? Okay, so we'll create a static method. Okay, so what we are going to do is update company name method, okay? So here, what we are going to do is we have a company name string, say the parameter that we are going to pass, we call it the company name. So our parameter's name is company name and our static variable's name is, we'll say it, this is the new company name, okay? Okay, so our company name equals new company name. So we can call this method and pass a new company name. But when we are calling it, since this is not a method that belongs to the instance, because this is a static method, which is similar to a static variable. So it's a class level attribute. When we are talking about static attributes, it's a class level attribute. Static methods are also class level methods. So when we are calling them, we have to use the class name instead of E1, E2. Employee dot update company name. Say it is new company name is DEF company. Okay. So the thing is, for all the other methods, calculate bonus amount, like methods, we use the object reference. E1 is our object. E2 is another object. But update company name is not a method that belongs to a particular object. It's a static method, which means it belongs to the class. Something similar to a static variable, which means we have only one copy, which is shared by all the classes. This is something like that. We have a one method shared by all the objects. So it does not belong to a single object. It belongs to the class. That's why we are using the class name and then the static method's name. Okay. But when we update it and try to print the company name, it's the same as the static method. The company name is also static variable. It does not belong to one particular object. So we have to use the class name because they are class level attributes and methods. So we try to print it. The name has changed. Okay, there's the one variable shared by all the classes and one method shared by all the classes. Okay. So I'll give you 2 minutes to If you want to catch up on anything, I'll give you 2 minutes to conclude everything of this part, and we will then start the next part, okay? You can have 2 minutes to conclude everything. If you want to type anything. Okay, we don't specifically have to import it because those employee and main, both the class files are in the same folder. It's inside the same directory, in the same folder. So we don't specifically have to import it. Okay, that's why. So if you need to complete anything, I'll give you just 2 minutes, okay? Then we will talk about constructors. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, type it in the chat. Okay, so the reason for using static is, so think about this bonus rate, okay? So each an employee will have their own employee number, name, salary, and a position. And they are different. So each employee has to have a okay. Each employee have their own name, employee number, position, and salary. Okay, but the thing is, we could have saved this bonus rate 0.2 similar to employee number name. But the thing is, it is the same for all the employees, regardless of their position or the values of other variables. It is the same. It will be 0.2% of their salary. It will be 0.2. So when we are creating new objects, we have to allocate new memory to these variables. E1 employee will have name, employee number, position, salary. And when we are saving values, those memory is consumed. When we are again creating a new object E2 for our employee 2, then again we need to have memory to save all these values for the variables. But the thing is, if we did the same for our bonus rate, then if we have like 2 copies of employee objects, then there will be 2 copies of this bonus rate. If there were 100, there will be 100 copies of this bonus rate. But the thing is, you don't have to have that much of copies because it is the same for all the employees. So what we do is we create a 1 copy and share it among all the objects. So to make it or to emphasize it that it's just a 1 copy, we use static. Okay, that's why we use static, and then the rest is similar to a normal instance variable. But when we are accessing it, we have to use the class name because it does not belong to any particular object. That's why we use the class name. Okay. I hope you get the idea. Okay, so that's the usage of static, and the static methods are something similar. Okay, so let me see whether there are any other questions. No, we don't have to create objects in the main method. We can create objects anywhere. Okay, we can create objects anywhere. Similar to these primitive types, we can create string variables, int variables anywhere. So you can treat your classes as a data type and create objects anywhere you want. It doesn't have to be the main method. Okay. Yes, we can have classes inside the main method, but it is usually preferred to create separate files for separate classes. Okay. Okay, so the next part is constructors. Okay, so by constructors we mean this two parentheses. Okay, so when we are creating, so I'll get rid of this redundant code. Okay, so that it will be more clear. Okay, so when we are creating a new employee object, what we did was use the class name and an object reference, new keyword, and employee class name followed by two parentheses. So we call this part a constructor. Okay, what we are doing is we are calling something like this. We are calling something like this. Employee. So we have employee E1 equals new employee and two parentheses. By using these two parentheses, when we are creating a new object, we are calling a special method, which is called a constructor similar to this. But we did not have it previously. We didn't have it, still our program worked. Because the thing is, even though we didn't put it there, the compiler puts it for us. Okay, so we don't have to have it here. Java assumes that we are going to create employee objects, so our compiler will put it in our class. So this is called the constructor, which has an access modifier and which has the same name as the class name, but it does not have a return type. So normal methods, we had a return type, but the constructors, we do not have return types. It's a special method which has the same name as the class name, and it does not have a constructor. Sorry, not constructor, a return type. A constructor is a special method which has the same name as the class name, but it does not have a return type. So this is a constructor because it has the same name as the class name and it does not have a return type. Even though we didn't have it before in our code, the program still worked because the compiler adds it for us. Okay, we don't have to add it. So we call this a no argument constructor because we are not passing anything within these brackets. So we don't have to have a no argument constructor because by default, Java adds it. The compiler adds it for us. But the thing is, we can modify this. Okay, we can modify this based on our requirements. So previously in our main method, when we are creating an object, we defined our reference here and added or modified the variables or added values to those variables like this. But instead of this, what we can do is we can pass those values to those variables at the time of the method creation. Okay, so what we do is this. Say when a new employee joins our company, we assign an employee number and we save their name, but we do not assign a salary or position right away. Okay, we wait sometimes until a probationary period is completed and then only we give their position and salary. Okay, first, so if we do it this way, what we can do is we can put a value to the employee number and employee name and leave the rest. But we can do the same thing using a constructor. Instead of doing this, we use a constructor. What we do is we define the list of parameters int emp number and the string name. Okay, so then we take these arguments as input to our constructor and we assign these arguments to our instance variables. What we can do is we have the employee number here as an instance variable. We put emp number equals the one that's being passed to this constructor, emp number. But the thing is, our instance variable is also employee number, and the one that is being passed to our constructor is also employee number. So inside the constructor, this employee number means this one. It will not refer to the instance variable. To make sure that we are referring to the instance variable, not the one that is being passed to the constructor, we have to put this in front of our instance variable. So now what this means is this dot employee number means the instance variable, and we assign the one that is being passed to our constructor to the instance variable of our object. Okay. And the other thing is this doesn't necessarily have to be identical to the instance variable. It can be just E. And we put E here. Okay. Still we can leave this dot employee number as it is because we are referring to the instance variable of this class. So we leave to emphasize that we put this in front of it. Okay. And we put this dot name equals the one that's being passed to the constructor name. Okay, we have modified our constructor here. Now the thing is, when we are creating an object, previously we had a no argument constructor and we didn't have to specifically put it in the class because Java added that for us. But the thing is, now we have modified it. Now at the object creation, our constructor expects these arguments. So when we are creating an object, we have to pass them. Okay, we have to pass the employee number 1 and employee name Taylor. Okay. Now, when we are creating the object, but at the time of this object creation, the constructor will take these two parameters and assign them to the instance variables of that object. And the other thing is we can have more than one constructor. So this constructor, what it does is it takes the employee number and name and sets them. If we want to set up all the variables, we can define another constructor. If we want to initialize all the variables at the time of object creation, we can put another constructor and add the rest. But the thing is, the constructors have the same name. And when we are defining a separate constructor, the only thing that is going to change is the list of parameters. Okay. We will add the remaining parameters here. This constructor takes not only the employee number and the employee name, it also takes the position and the salary. Okay, we assign it to the instance variables of our object like this. Okay. So now what we can do is we can create employee objects. We can call either of these constructors. and they are differentiated based on the input parameters. If we just put employee number and a name here, the constructor that's being called is the first one, this one. If we pass a possession and a salary too, it will call the second constructor at the time of object creation. The constructors are resolved based on the input parameters or the input arguments to that constructor when we create an object. Okay. So when we create the E1 object, we have passed all the parameters, all the values for all the variables of the E1 object. But we can create a new employee object as E2 and call the first constructor. Employee number is 2 and his name is Harry. So now when we create the object, it will call the constructor with 2 arguments, which is the first one. Okay. Constructors are resolved based on the input arguments. Okay. So that's what constructors do. Okay. And the thing is, we can put multiple constructors and we call it constructor overloading. We have multiple constructors with different functionalities and different input parameters. So we call it constructor overloading. Okay. So you can type it or you can try it and see. Since we have passed all the variables at the time of object creation, now we don't need to say E1 dot employee number equals 1. We don't have to assign values like this because we are passing all the values for the attributes at the time of object creation. You don't have to add one by one like we did on the previous example. Okay, you can try this example and see. And in the meantime, if you have any question, you can put it in the chat. Okay, so there are a few questions. The meaning of this is we are referring to the instance variable of a currently executing class. Okay, if you see an example, if you look at it, so E1, once we call the constructor of when creating the E1 object, it is going to call this constructor, the second one, and it will take in these arguments, employee number, name, position, and double, and assign them to the currently executing or the object that's been currently called, which is E1. So to specifically say that we are referring to the currently executing object, we use this. So when we pass the values to the constructor when we are creating the E1 object, second constructor will be called, and these arguments will be taken into the constructor, and they will be used to initialize the values of the E1 object. So this means the currently executing object. To refer to that, we use this, which is E1. So instead of saying E1, we use this. So values of this object is something like that. The currently calling object or the currently executing object. For printing, we have set up all the variables using a constructor, but it doesn't change anything. It still can access them. Okay? If you want to print the employee name of E1 object, E1 dot employee name, we can just use this. The difference was previously when we are setting up values, we used E1 dot name equals some name, E1 dot salary, and then equals their salary. Salary equals their salary. But we created the object first and then assigned values or initialized values of that object. Instead of doing that, what we do is here we are passing the values to the constructor so that they will be assigned at the time of object creation rather than initializing the object first and then initializing the values for the variable. We did it previously as two different steps, but now we are doing it in a one step. We initialize all the variables at the time of object creation. Okay, this means the object that's being currently called. When we called any method of any variable method of E1, so I'll say it again, okay? So here we are calling the constructor to create an E1 object, and the constructor that's been called is the second one of the employee class. So we pass these arguments to the constructor, employee number, name, possession, and salary. We want these values to be assigned as the values of this instance variable. So this dot employee number means employee number of the E1 object, the currently executing object E1. When this line is being executed, E1 object is the one that's being currently executed. To assign values to the variables of that object, we are using this. This refers to the currently executing object. Okay. So I think everyone get the idea of today's lesson. So we talked about classes and then creating objects and then constructors. Okay, so I have already uploaded the materials that you need to the classroom. Have another quick. Okay, so today we have talked about classes, objects, methods, and constructors. We have seen some small examples. So I hope you get the idea. And before winding up the session, I want to remind you something. So in this course, we are going to give you a small project. Okay, you have to complete a small project, but this is just a reminder. Okay, you don't have to worry about anything for now. But we will start your projects by the 10th week. Okay, probably we will start to focus on your project, or we will give instructions on your project by the 10th week. So this is just to remind you that you will have to complete a small project, a small command line application, something like a small command line application for a maybe ticketing system or something, and maybe an app to put reminders or something like that. Very simple command line application, and you will have to start it by the 10th week. We will remind this to you again. So to be prepared for that, you have to follow these lessons every day and do your lab sheet, and you will have time to do the project. Okay, you don't have to worry about the projects now. We will remind it you again. Okay, so this is just a reminder. So GUI, we don't expect you to put GUIs, but if you are comfortable with it, you can do that. Okay. It seems like there are no more questions. Okay. Okay, we will upload the new lab sheet today, and you can submit it. I think it in on or before 16th. Okay, you'll have 1 week time to complete your lab sheet, and you can submit it. Okay. If you have no more questions, we'll end up the session. Thank you all for joining for today's session.